They were 381 SEALs with nowhere left to run. Tanks on the ridges. Mortars in the dark. One voice cracked through the static. "Oh God, we're toast." Then a lone A-10 cut the sky. A woman at the stick. Emily Robert. And she did something nobody planned. The road in the valley didn't move. It just hung there under the moon. A dusty vein the mountain refused to bleed. Emily Robert watched it from a map that smelled like old paper and coffee. She turned her broken watch face up like a tiny moon itself stopped at 0217. It had died during survival school. She never fixed it. Time ought to break for some things. Her empty wallet lay beside the map. Not because she was broke. Because she kept it that way. No family photos. No lucky bills. Nothing to barter with fear. Light travels faster when you carry less. The call came raw. Not crisp radio talk. Human. "Oh God, we're toast." Then a flood of coordinates. A second voice, dry as flint. 381 SEALs. "We're cut off. Armor, rockets, jammers. We need a hole." The ops tent went silent. People glanced at the screens. The jamming turned the valley into a black lake. Signals plunged and never came up. The colonel pointed. "Scramble the pair." He looked at the weather. "Cancel the pair." "Ceiling's dropping." He looked at Emily. "We wait for daylight." She remembered the dusty road on the map. It curled like a spine. She remembered the empty wallet. It meant no debts, or it meant every debt. She picked up her helmet. The crew chief stared. "Ma'am, that's not an order." "Copy," she said, and climbed the ladder anyway. The A-10 was honest metal. Not pretty. Useful. Thick-skinned. The kind of machine that shrugged when the world grew teeth. She ran the checklist by touch. Left hand on the throttle. Right on the sense of what had to be done. The engines wound up like a promise. Taxi lights cut a white path over gravel. She felt the base breathing around her. People running. A truck waving her down. A red wand swinging no. Her broken watch stared back from her wrist. Still 0217, the time when nobody sane moved. She moved. Air lifted her. That first shrug off the earth never stopped being a small miracle. The runway fell away. The base shrank to a cluster of thoughts she couldn't keep. She nosed toward the coordinates and spoke to them like they were a person. Stay alive. Stay loud. Mountains rose like the ribs of a dead giant. The valley pinched. The jammers bit at her radios. A low growl licked the canopy. Thunder without a storm. Artillery far enough to think. Close enough to feel. Bronze Hall, do you copy? She tried. No answer. Only breath. Not hers, she descended. The night breathed back shards of tracer. They stitched the sky with impatient hands. Someone down there knew how to set a trap. She pictured 381 men behind ruined walls. Mud on faces. Grit in eyes. Humor gone quiet. A leader counting bullets with his fingers. Then counting again because the first number felt like a lie. She found the road again. Not on the map now, but under her. Dusty and simple. It ran straight toward a hill with scars where tires had tried and failed. That's where she saw them. The armor on the ridge, tungsten teeth under tarps, trucks squatting like toads, and a shape near the curve that didn't belong. An ammunition truck, fat and patient like a secret nobody dared move. She was one jet. She was one pilot. She was the thing between we're toast and maybe not. Emily toggled the master arm. Her thumb hovered over a future no one had planned for her to carry alone. The first missile lock squealed like a kettle boiling over. From below, a voice came through the static as if the mountain had learned to speak. "Warthog, if you're real, we need a door." She lowered the nose into the dark and built them one. The missile tone went solid, and then something lit behind her canopy. A heat that didn't feel like dawn at all. She threw the jet sideways hard enough to wake bones. The missile climbed past her left wing and burst with a white hiss that ate the stars. The cockpit went daylight bright, then night again. The jet shuddered, shook it off, and kept flying. Her broken watch winked. Still 0217. Time didn't care. Her first pass was for breath, not kills. She raked the far ridge with the gun. Short bursts walking the line where the machine gun nests had cut the valley into cages. The Avenger spoke in a voice that belonged in foundries and storms. Dirt leapt, men dove. The cages bent. "Bronze Hall, mark yourselves," she said, lower now, 100 feet over rock that looked hungry. Flares popped from the compound like orange flowers. 3, then 5. Too many, a trick. Or a crowd so big even tricks ran out. "North building," a voice said, calm. Blue smoke on the roof. We're 381, we're bleeding. Can you hold them? Hold them? She was one chain trying to leash a pack. But a pack hates a chain that bites. Copy, she said. The jammers chewed the air again. She could almost taste copper. The anti-aircraft guns woke. Their rhythm was old, like drum beats learned before cities. She broke left, then right. She dragged their eyes, their barrels, their hunger away from the buildings with the smoke and the voices. Fuel ticked down. Weight ticked down. Seconds ticked nowhere because her watch refused to play. Her empty wallet pressed against her leg inside the flight suit. Paper thin. She thought of the person who had told her to keep it empty. You don't owe that sky anything, he had said. Let the sky owe you. She didn't believe that. Not tonight. She took a second pass clean, low in the throat of the valley. The gun walked through a line of trucks. One went black. One went sideways. One coughed and lay still. A tank turned its head at her. She gave it a razor of cannon fire that peeled paint and patience. Then the sound you don't forget. A new tone, not the shrill panic of a heat seeker. A colder note. Radar. The kind of note that tells you someone methodical has found your shape in the dark and drawn a square around it. She looked for the source. There. A box dug into the slope. Canvas shroud. Men hunched like carpenters around a door they meant to nail shut. She armed a Maverick and called it by its proper name in her head. Help me open that door. The rectangle flashed hot on the screen. She pressed. The missile slid off the rail with the aloof certainty of a tool doing what it was born for. It tilted, it bit. The box on the slope came apart like a bad lie. The men ducked, then didn't move at all. Warthog, the calm voice said again, softer. Who are you? Emily, she said, surprising herself. She'd expected to say call sign, rank, the approved version of herself. But the night knew her real name first. Keep that smoke up. The mountain had more teeth. Artillery stepped closer. The walking kind, the kind that measures a room before it enters. One shell opened a wall. A second removed the floor. She saw men carry other men by their straps, slow, careful, furious. Third pass. Shorter bursts. Minimal time exposed. She was writing dashes across a long letter no one could finish until daylight. The fuel numbers told her the letter would end before then. Support inbound? She asked the sky. It had no answer. She climbed a little to breathe. The valley laid itself out like a sentence with too many commas. Along the dusty road near the bend, the fat ammunition truck still waited. It wasn't shielded. It wasn't rushed. That meant it was important. Or booby-trapped, or both. Her mind did the math a soldier does without moving his lips. Risk versus chance versus the quiet voice that says this is the hinge. The hinge, if it worked, would swing a door wide enough for hundreds to run through. If it failed, the blast would throw shrapnel through the compound like 1,000 nails and her name would be a swear forever. Don't. The calm voice again, as if reading her. Too close to us, copy. She didn't copy. She just said it so he could heal the space between want and need. Her left engine coughed. Smoke trailed. Not heavy, not yet. She tried the radio again. Found static. Found prayer-like noise. Found the smallest gap and pushed her voice through it. Inbound aircraft, if any, I need 15 minutes. I'll buy them. Send me a receipt later. Lightning without rain cracked across her canopy. A near miss. The anti-air gunners were angry now. Anger makes people brave. It also makes them sloppy. She used that. She pulled them into bad angles. She forced them to move their guns off the compound to chase her tail through the rocks. She took a breath hard enough to taste rubber. Her broken watch didn't twitch. Down in the compound, the blue smoke thinned. The voice went brittle. Warthog, ammo low. We're throwing rocks next. Then the valley went quiet in a way that made her stomach drop, as if the whole place had paused to listen to something she couldn't hear. It was the sound of heavy engines starting in unison. Every ridgeline around them came alive. Emily swallowed, leveled, and saw what was coming over the dusty road. Headlights, a column, and a surprise that made her whisper, "How many?" before the count broke her throat. They kept arriving. Trucks by the dozen, APCs by the handful, a tank that looked bored until it opened its mouth. She could not count all of it. The night had become arithmetic done with fistfuls of stones. Bronze Hall status? She asked, breathing. The voice said. A pause. For now, she needed to change the math. She scraped the valley floor with her shadow and made the column flinch. The first armored vehicle in line jerked to a stop, confused. That jammed the second. The third bumped the second, a dull clang that felt like hope. She gave the lead vehicle 2 beats of gun. Steel crumpled like paper. Men tumbled out and made themselves flat. The jet took a hit. Not a scream, a thud. Something metal kissed the right wing and left a bruise that glowed on her caution panel. She drew her sidearm. 2 magazines, a knife, a whistle no one uses except in training and miracles. She breathed in through the fight, out through the math. Overhead, a helicopter's searchlight swiped the ravine's mouth. It lingered. It moved on. Then a new lamp flared. Not friendly. A flashlight playing the rocks. Careful and close. Footsteps pinched the gravel. A voice called, soft and pleased, in a language that made her think of knives being sharpened. She held still. The beam found the white tag on her harness. It paused, and the mouth that owned that beam smiled. Right before a hand, not hers, closed over the beam from behind. The flashlight smacked stone and rolled. A low sound followed. Not a shout. The sound a man makes when his lungs forget their lesson. Another shape folded into the dark. The new hand owned a suppressed rifle and a patience that belonged to people who train on rain-soaked beaches until the ocean respects their names. He didn't look at Emily. He didn't need to. He kept his eyes on the ravine's mouth and did the next thing. Then the next. Then quiet, ma'am. A whisper brushed the rock near her ear. With me. He smelled like dust and cordite and laundry soap. A seal but not a number. A person. He guided her by touch and by the memory of paths he had just invented. They climbed through a booby-trapped world that didn't care who they were. That world is fair like that, and it makes saints out of stubborn people. They reached a dent in the earth where Thorn had resigned. He stopped. He listened with his jaw, not his ears. We'll move when they do, he said. Name? She asked because names are anchors. Pike, he said. Aaron. Emily. He grunted like a man writing it down somewhere nobody could read. He handed her a strip of cloth. She wrapped it around a cut that had been voting on whether to bleed more. The cloth darkened. The rock smelled aimless. He lifted his wrist and checked his watch. It wasn't broken. It glowed a responsible green. He frowned. Time is a liar, he said in a voice that told her he wanted to believe the opposite. She took her broken watch and pressed it to his for a second. Sometimes it helps you tell the truth, she said. Voices swelled again in the ravine. 3, maybe 5. The cadence of men who don't expect to die because they don't remember yet that they can. Pike touched her arm. We cut left, he breathed. Then we run straight into Ugly. Sold, she said. They cut left. Ugly met them halfway. It wore the face of a man younger than Emily's last regret. He raised his weapon. Pike's hand arrived first. The knife spoke very little. The rock finished the sentence. The second man fired. The bullet lost interest in the world somewhere behind Emily's ear and chewed a shrub instead. She shot twice. The second shot mattered. Apaches are overhead, Pike said. Extraction in 2 minutes. If 2 minutes is a thing that exists, it might. It might not. The dusty road beyond the ravine stretched like a scar under the moon. Emily remembered it as a line on a map and as a ribbon under her wings. Now it was right there, made of ground the world had burned and cooled too many times. It led south toward rumors of safety and north toward the kind of history people tell to make themselves bigger. They sprinted bent at the waist, fast, but not foolish. The empty wallet tapped her hip like a metronome. The Apaches stitched a curtain of angry light across the hills. The curtain moved, protecting, punishing, persuading steel to forget its mission. They slid into a bowl of shadow where the helicopter could dangle its rope. A team waited, not many, just enough to make space feel smaller and safer. Hands found her harness and her arm. Someone said her name like they had been thinking it for hours. Emily, you did it. He might have been Bronze Hall. He might have been the mountain talking through a man. She clipped to the rope. Pike clipped beside her. The rope lifted. The horizon tilted. The ground tried to pull them back with a magnet made of fear and blame. The helicopter grunted and rose anyway. Below, the dusty road carried a long line of men south. Not running now. Moving like people who have survived the first part of a sentence and aren't sure yet about the second. Some carried others. Some looked back. All of them wore faces the night had written on too quickly. The helicopter took a hit. Not deep enough to sting. Enough to make the pilot curse politely and tighten his hands on the machine. Emily looked at Pike. He looked at her. They shared the smile people trade when they quietly agreed to never describe this part as close. Over the intercom, the Apache lead's voice came thinner now. "We're at bingo. 2 minutes, we have to peel." "Copy," the rope pilot said. "We're outbound. 1 more rope on the ridge, then clean break." "Negative," someone else snapped. "Ridge rope is cold, too hot. Abort that pickup." Emily looked at the ridge. She could see movement against the sky. Small. A tiny pen scratch. The motion you notice when you've learned to see the world's edges. A man waved something. A strap, a sling. "Who's on that rope?" she asked. "Just a rear guard," the pilot said. They knew the risk, rear guard. The phrase sits in the mouth like dry bread. She unhooked. "What are you doing?" Pike hissed, his voice small against rotor thunder. "Paying a debt," she said. The empty wallet felt heavy for the first time. She handed it to Pike. "Proof." "Proof of what?" "That I owed someone a fossil of luck and they'll want to see it." She stepped to the edge. The helicopter still climbed. The rope still hummed. The pilot yelled a word she didn't keep. She jumped. She fell 20 feet and didn't break. She rolled like a promise kept too late and came up with grit in her teeth and the ridge in front of her. Someone up there waved again, a shape. A human noun. The ground answered with muzzle flashes. She ran toward them. Up above, the helicopter swung. Indecision painted on its path. And then the sky forgot its courage and threw a new threat into the story. A streak from the far ridge. Thin and fast, a shoulder-fired missile with her name almost spelled right. There wasn't time to shoot it down. There was barely time to see it. The missile came like a bad idea, straight and shameless. The helicopter banked. Slow because rope and weight and gravity like debts. Someone in the cabin said a prayer that sounded more like an argument. Emily didn't look up again. She pushed for the ridge. She tasted iron and old rain in the dirt. Her knees had opinions. Her lungs filed complaints. She ignored the paperwork. The man at the rope anchor swung his arm in a circle, telling her no, telling her run, telling her that lives are tallied in harsh columns. He wore a face with a lot of daylight left in it. Too young. Rear guard because he was still stubborn enough to think the math could be cheated from the back end. "Go," he said. "Trade you," she said, and handed him the rope carabiner she'd brought down with her. The action was so ridiculous it silenced him for half a heartbeat. Then he clipped. She clipped to a second line. The helicopter tried to find a balance between gravity and guilt. The missile struck. Not the cabin. Not the rotor. It hit the space 10 feet behind the tail where air turns from laminar to troubled. It shoved the helicopter sideways like a shoulder in a bar fight. Metal shrieked. The rope went wild. Men swore in 3 languages at once. The pilot fought the machine back to a kind of flying that had too much personality. "Still with us," the pilot grunted. "Not pretty." "Still with us! Go!" Emily yelled. "Go now." They rose. Slow at first. Faster as the machine found a rhythm that didn't hate them. The valley dropped. The ridge let go. The dust turned to distant weather. Below, the dusty road unreeled into the south. A long, uneven string of men and will. The Apaches kept station a little longer than their fuel liked, chewing up any boldness that strayed too close. Then they turned away, low and regretful, toward fuel and dawn. Emily looked at the man she'd traded ropes with. He looked back, eyes wide like someone who'd just been forced to read the small print on life's contract. He made a face that tried to be a smile. It didn't need to be. Pike leaned out the door and shouted over the world. "You write your name where people can see it, ma'am. We'll read it out loud." "Don't," she said. "Write the road's name. It's the only reason we're not telling this story to nobody." He nodded like he understood something. He would not be able to explain later to anyone who hadn't been here. They crested the last ridge before friendly dirt began. It wasn't sanctuary. It was simply a place where the paperwork of help becomes easier. The helicopter coughed again. Warnings lit like little cities on the panel. Her broken watch still said 0217. She decided she liked it that way. Some nights deserved to live outside clocks. The pilot called a mayday to men who already knew. Vectors came back. A landing area. A field with tall grass and a rusted tractor that hadn't moved since a man with grease on his hands decided to be old. As they sank, she looked out at the road. In her mind, she walked it. Dust on boots. Mud where the spring cuts the ditch. She kept walking until she reached the basin where the force would splinter into smaller groups and vanish into folds the enemy couldn't count. She listened to the silence that would happen there, thick, grateful, disbelieving. Then the noise, busy, disciplined, necessary. Exfil is a long verb. The skids kissed ground. The machine settled, complaining and proud. Medics ran like letters you write fast because your hand is finally sure. Hands reached. Names answered. Someone laughed in the way that means tears are for later. Emily climbed down last. The earth felt suspicious under her, like it might pull a trick. It didn't. She turned the warning off so her brain could think. The switch clicked like a promise no one should have to make. She worked the column again. Not to annihilate it, to hurt it. She rubbed the flank of the convoy with fire until it turned toward an old wash, the dried river that ran between two useless hills. The wash was a soft trap. Too narrow. Bad angles. If she could push enough hardware into it, they'd bottle their own attack. Her fuel bled down another digit. Emily, the calm voice said. She liked that he used her name. We can surge. We can sprint to the south wall if you open something there. She looked south. The ridge curled like a sleeping dog. Under it, the dusty road widened before it narrowed again. A throat. If she burned a groove across that point, maybe they'd run the men through. She pictured 381 boots hammering dirt that had only known goats. She pictured clouds of breath in cold air. And behind them, the wash full of steel and confusion. She chased the convoy once more to keep it busy. She felt the gun run low. The feed shook like a bag of rice with only a few grains left. She checked the missiles. 1. She smiled at the number. 1 is a story. If it lands right. She climbed just enough to see the valley like a map. Her broken watch flashed dull light as a flare reflected off the cracked crystal. O217 still lying. She tucked the image away. A small stopped moon pinned to her arm as if the night had sworn not to let time move until she was done. A spot on the southern ridge flashed with a too clean square. Another radar set. Younger. Meaner. She fired the last missile and didn't bother to watch the handshake. She dove the instant it cleared the rail, dragging every barrel in the valley after her. The missile found its square. The square forgot its shape. South throat's yours, she said. Run! It is a strange thing to hear hundreds of men start running when you cannot actually hear them. The radio vibrates with breath. The ground throws dust higher. Even the dark seems to shift. She felt their movement like a drum inside her ribs. She cut the ridgeline with fire to discourage anyone who wanted to be brave on the wrong day. Brave, she had learned, was better saved for after you survive. She worked the opposite ridge, too, forcing heads down. Short, mean bursts. No speeches. Her left engine light came on. The jet rolled its shoulders like an exhausted boxer. She asked it for 5 more minutes and fed it careful hands. Power, trim, angle. Words she could shape even when the valley's words ran out. Warthog. The calm voice panted now. We're in the gap. But the far side, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The far side wasn't empty. It was a second line of guns waking up late to the party and angry they'd missed the cake. She hauled the jet through a turn tight enough to make her vision gray. The gun was nearly dry, down to the stubborn handful that never wants to leave the drum. She gave those away like you give a blanket to someone colder than you. The far line ducked. Not all of it. Enough. A blast stitched the air under her left wing and the cockpit flashed with warning. Hydraulics. She fought the stick as the jet tried to decide who it belonged to. Stay. She told it, like talking to a dog whose whole body shakes because it wants to run toward traffic. In her lap, the empty wallet shifted again. She found herself thinking about the gas station where she bought it for $5, because the old one fell apart in a storm. She had kept it empty on purpose since. On nights like this, it felt like you carry a hole with you, a place to put other people's fear so they don't have to hold it. Bronze Hall, talk to me. We're through, he said, a laugh that wasn't quite laughter. Half the force is. The rest is fighting the hinge, the ammunition truck, the near ridges, the men who had decided to die where they stood so the ones behind them could sprint. She could picture it without seeing it. That is the curse of imagination and the gift of empathy. No one should have to picture both at once. Her jet bucked. The left engine coughed smoke into the night. She tried a relight and got a cough back that sounded like a smoker's apology. She had minutes, maybe less. She looked down at the dusty road and the ammunition truck still sitting there like a loaded sentence waiting for a verb. Don't, he had said before. Now he didn't say it. She saw the blast in her mind before it existed. She saw the pressure wave, the fragments, the way it would slap the valley clean in a circle. and the way the circle would reach the men she was trying to save. Sometimes you choose what breaks you. Sometimes it chooses for you. She leveled, breathed smoke and dust, and made a decision that would brand her name into metal or into memory. She pushed the nose down. The world tilted, and as the truck grew large enough to show the dents in its door, a new light flared at the far ridge and painted the sky the same color as her broken watch. It wasn't dawn. It was a helicopter's flare pattern, flung wide and reckless. Someone inbound. Rotor thunder piled over the mountains like drums in a cave. At least 2 birds. Maybe more. She grinned at the sound with teeth she didn't know she was showing. Apaches? She asked the sky. 2 minutes, a new voice said. Fast, crisp, different from the calm one. We've got your back, Warthog. Hold the wolves. 2 minutes is forever you can spend only once. She pulled off the ammunition truck and rolled toward the far ridge instead. She carved the ridgeline with gunfire because it was what the jet still had the strength to do. She made her fire walk low, not to kill all, but to make each head reconsider. Doubt is heavier than bullets. Her jet complained. Warning lights blinked like a cheap Christmas strand. Hydraulics dropping. Fuel freckles on glass. She flicked a switch with a knuckle and felt the left panel groan back to life enough to pretend. Bronze Hall, she said. Keep moving south. Don't bunch. I'll paint your path. I don't know your face, he said, breathless. It sounded like a confession. But I owe it lunch. Keep the receipt, she said. She rolled into the throat again and scratched a line for them to follow. The dust rose and caught her lights, turning the valley into a snow globe full of angry glitter. Beyond the throat, the ground opened into a safer basin. Not safe, safer. Enough to breathe twice, her empty wallet pressed against her leg. She thought of a simple diner in a town with 1 traffic light. Eggs at midnight. Coffee that tried and failed to be good. People who didn't ask what you did with your life because your eyes already told them enough. That's where you take a debt like this. You sit, you eat. You listen to the silence that follows men home. The rotors arrived. The Apaches came over the ridge like arguments you cannot win. Their cannons stitched the far line to the dirt. Hellfires reached out with cold fingers and undid the knots in the convoy. Trucks burned. Men scattered. A tank reversed, then stopped, then slumped. Emily exhaled a word that wasn't a prayer and wasn't a curse. Just air returning. Her jet dipped again. The left engine's gauges slid. She leaned into the good engine and balanced the crippled bird with foot and will. The canopy smelled like hot wiring and something sweet, like the way a toaster smells right before it dies. Warthog, you're smoking, the Apache lead said. You have to bug out. Negative, she said. I'll bug out when they stop shooting at people who can't fly. He laughed in a way that wasn't disagreement. You've got 90 seconds before your 90 seconds run out. She looked at the ammunition truck again. Still there, still fat. A single Apache would swat it in a blink. But the blast in this compressed bowl could climb the basin and slap the throat. She tasted the risk like metal on the tongue. Bronze Hall? 2/3 through, he said. The calm was back in his voice, but now it wore a limp. The ones fighting the hinge are stubborn. So are the wolves. She set the crosshairs not on the truck this time, but on a rock shelf above it. She ran the last of the gun in a zipper across that shelf. Stone came down in dirty curtains. Dust swallowed the truck. The blast would still be a god if someone set it off, but gods hate shallow graves. She made it deeper. Her jet coughed a final warning. The left engine gave her the sound of someone closing a door gently out of politeness. She throttled back, begged, promised, lied. It stayed closed. Warthog, Apache lead said. Punch out. Not over them, she said, because she didn't want her parachute to be the brightest thing an enemy gunner saw. She banked toward a darker slot in the ridgeline, a ravine, broken rock, thorn. She could put the seat there. The helicopters could fence the ground. If she lived through the opening shock and the landing and the sprint, she turned to look at the compound one last time. The blue smoke was gone. The dust was a river now. The southern gap seethed with motion. Human motion. That's the only kind that keeps you believing in mornings. Bronze Hall, she said. Your door's open. And you? He asked. I'm the hinge, she said and pulled the ejection handle. The world shot her out like a vow. Cold hit first, then the jerk. Then the fierce quiet of hanging under a silk flower with teeth all around you. She watched the A-10 keep flying a few more heartbeats on stubborn physics and affection before it folded into the slope in a careful fire. She hit ugly ground. The chute dragged. She cut it. Rocks bit her shins. Thorns carved polite signatures into her flight suit. She rolled under a boulder that smelled like dust and old rain. Above, the Apache snarled. Below, a chorus of voices moved through the dark, none of them hers. Her empty wallet was still in her pocket. Her broken watch had stopped at 0217 in the sky and 0217 on the ground. Good. Let it lie.